So in this final video, what I want to do is very briefly mention sort of two things that pop up towards the end of the paper. The first one shows up on page 384, where our authors tell us that uh, within ancient China, we the ancient Chinese never sort of encountered the idea of an omniscient or omnipotent deity, right? The idea of the monotheistic God that we have here in the West just doesn't show up among ancient Chinese cultures. So we don't have any problems with foreknowledge, right? Right. One of the major problems in medieval philosophy is reconciling freedom with divine foreknowledge. Well, if we don't have divine foreknowledge, if God doesn't know what's going to happen ahead of time, and if fate is negotiable, then we don't have worries about, right, determinism and free will. And again, the kind of atomism, or sort of breaking things down into their simplest parts, the kind of atomism that we find among the ancient Greeks and in the Cartesian tradition, and even in our contemporary Western traditions. That kind of atomism wasn't found in ancient China. And so we don't have to worry about how the whole, in this case, our bodies, right, us, how our behaviors are determined by the component parts. So classical Chinese philosophers and thinkers never had this debate between free will and hard determinism or determinism. Just they didn't have the conceptual scaffolding that would have required that debate. So so there are worries about freedom and responsibility, but they're different kinds of worries, right, than what we find in the Western tradition. They're fundamentally social and moral worries. So it's a question about free will with respect to satisfying our social obligations, fulfilling our moral roles. So that was the first thing. The second thing is in the section on ideas about causation or causality. So one way in which I think we're enculturated into thinking about causation or cause and effect is that one thing causes another, which causes another, which causes another, and we get this kind of linear, these linear causal chains. In the Eastern, in Eastern philosophical traditions, in ancient or classical Chinese philosophical traditions, we have more nuanced, more complicated ideas about causation. So causation isn't linear, right, among classical Chinese thinkers, the way that we find it among classical Greek thinkers, or even in the Cartesian tradition. Rather, causation is kind of like a back and forth, sort of reciprocal, right? So instead of just thinking about sort of linear causes, we can think about how one thing causes another thing, which in turn creates a feedback loop, which in turn sort of feeds into the feedback loop even more. So we have this kind of like in a sense, kind of like circular causation, right? Where it's just right where we don't have one thing causing another, but rather we have tangled up lines of causal relationships. And with that more sophisticated notion of causation, this gives us resources for thinking more flexibly about human behavior and what it is to be human.